Добрый вечер, Tubaneros. My first update video on Islam in the West was getting a bit long, so I'm addressing the example of Iraq as a second part in the relationship of the West and rise of militant Islam. How the secular democratic West has and continues to play a leading role in creating and fostering the very fanatics it claims to resist, and is bankrupting its own budgets to deploy its forces against. So, on to post-Saddam Iraq. A very graphic example of how secular democracy and nation building means nothing when expedient. Here, U.S. forces, military, diplomatic, political, and academic, encouraged Islamic sectarianism by deliberately favoring it over secular nationalism. That was seen as Ba'athist, as the traditional secular Arab nationalist enemy. Fostering Shiite and Sunni divisions was somehow to be the antidote to Ba'athism, to Arab nationalism. Of course, it was really part of the divide and conquer strategy of managing occupied Iraq. This was very similar to the breakup of Yugoslavia, advocated by many of the same policy experts. In the case of Iraq, an internal separation was preferred over outright secession and dismemberment, although that was on the table in the early days of the Iraq occupation. Thus, the Shiites and Kurds, who were thought to be most useful to coalition forces, were given near independence. In the case of the Kurds, very similar to the status of Kosovars in Serbia, while Shiites were given favored status within the Iraqi government, in particular recruited into the security forces, which had implications for the country's general evolution, because there they were implicitly encouraged to indulge sectarian murders as a fundamental counterinsurgency tactic, bringing Iraq to the point of a sectarian civil war. This death squad tactic had all the earmarks of a similar strategy used in Christian Central America in the 80s, if you might remember, up to the use of public body dumps, traditionally not a technique of Middle Eastern militias. And that's because the official head of the Iraq Special Operations Forces and of the Iraqi National Counterterrorism Team was Brigadier General Simeon Trombitas, who spent 4 years training counterinsurgency troops in Colombia and El Salvador. U.S.-trained Salvadoran forces even assisted in the training of the ISOF. To justify this, General Trombitas said, and I'll quote here, to The Nation magazine in June of 2009, "It's a world of coalitions. The longer we work together, the more alike we are. When we share our values and our experiences with other armies, we make them the same." While Iraqis, head of the ISOF, they kill and no one will hold them accountable because they belong to the Americans. All the while, of course, Western pundits were busy doing their part, blaming age-old religious feuds, washing their hands of these Islamic fanatics who just can't get the secular democratic process while being armed and trained by the very forces praised by Hitchens and Harris as bringing Western enlightenment to the Muslim world. In general, then, it's safe to say that the collapse of the left, not just the USSR, but the secular left nationalism of the post-war generation, left political Islam as the leading, if not the only contender, in addressing the unresolved problems of poverty, corruption, and hunger that still plague the Muslim regions of the Third World. For the West to rag on the ragheads for not getting the principles of democracy or being incapable of understanding secular rights and law is just more self-serving hypocrisy emanating from the usual command headquarters of Washington, London, and Brussels. People who know the historical truth much better than they'll ever admit to you. Uh-oh. Who can that be now? Hello? Hafez al-Assad? Oh, yeah, the late president for life of Syria, and rival of Saddam Hussein in the Arab Ba'ath Party. You just wanted to say you don't understand why you're demonized for repressing the Islamic Brotherhood and leveling the Syrian city of Hama. That you did it without depleted uranium or cluster bombs from 30,000 feet. Well, that's just the point. You didn't do it the Western way. No wonder your son must be overthrown in the name of freedom, democracy, and human rights. You guys just don't get the big picture at all, do you?